Hello, welcome to another game devlog for Strange Shores, a desktop fishing game. So to get straight into it, this week was challenging in some ways, but also, no, not really hopeful, still just very challenging. Now if you ever tried developing a game yourself, you'll probably know that there are many things that you're going to run into that feel like you're smacking your head against a brick wall with a glass bottle in between. And for us, this week was much the same. Now at this point, James had got two-player multiplayer working. We tested it out, it worked perfectly. You could send emojis, you could see each other's fishes when they'd been caught, and there was also even a nice little animation for when people were actually catching fish that would be updated regularly in the game. And being the pretty little princess that I always am, I wanted more. So I asked James if we could start looking at doing 4-player instead of 2-player. He'd put the 2-player together relatively quickly, and it all worked functionally perfectly. So it seemed like there was no reason, there would be no difficulty in achieving that. However, we could not, or I could not, have been more wrong. Implementing 4-player into Strange Shores has been a ball ache, to put it bluntly, and actually probably quite positively. I think James would take ball ache over implementing multiplayer into Strange Shores any day of the week. And so this has involved multiple rounds of testing between myself and James to see if we could get it to work, with him also running several clients on his side to add in the 3rd and the 4th player. Now there was the slight issue of sizing and whether or not they could all fit, so we have 2 characters that are essentially facing forward that need separate animations and different art styles effectively from the previous 2 characters. But this was a quick fix, and James had created these fairly quickly. But the bigger problem essentially was getting it to work flawlessly, and we hadn't quite made it there. So we'll check back in next week to see where we got to, technically this week. But now, after coming back from my game jam the previous week, I had essentially started smashing out artwork and started creating the various different backgrounds that were going to be unlockable in the game. So this took a bit of idea forming, bit of brainstorming, and a lot of it depended on what I was actually able to achieve. There may have been 1 or 2 pieces of artwork that I made initially that I didn't animate because by the time we'd looked at it, we'd realised it didn't really fit the style or the tone of the game, and also it just wasn't very interesting. But still, I had made 4 backgrounds, and so I made 1 more for the game and then continue to work on the fish. Now we received a bit of help in terms of making the fish and objects from a previous little helper known as Freddie Mercury, or that's what we've codenamed him. In the game you'll be able to see the credits and actually see his real name, so you can search him up and harass him online. But nevertheless, we managed to get 250 fish and objects by the end of last week, and all of them were implemented into the game, ready for me to make more content out of. Now if you watch our shorts, or if you'd like to go and watch our shorts, you will see the various different objects popping up in there to give you an idea of the type of things you'll be able to find in Strange Shores. Now the randomness has definitely increased, and if anything, that's helped us come up with a new tagline for marketing purposes, which will be that you can find anything and everything in Strange Shores. Now if you also watched last week's, you will know that we had a massive influx of wish lists. Thankfully this was from a Taiwanese article or news site posting our game and details of what it was about. This is where we got the initial injection of 1,400 wish lists that made myself and James feel very, very positively about the game and its reach and the audience, and then also, to be completely honest, the chance of making money from it. Now, we are obviously not devs that are solely focused on making money. We both like games, even if one of us has sunk considerably more hours of their life that they'll never get back into games. And we want to make games that are interesting, fun, and that people enjoy. You won't find any battle passes here. However, to be completely realistic, if we had enough money from Strange Shores to continue working full-time on games, we would be able to not only increase our experience and knowledge, but overall to deliver better games that we may feel the market is currently lacking. So the wish lists continue to rise, however far slower than that one day where we got 1,400. The next day we saw maybe 200, and the day after that maybe another 100, and it slowly crept down to a point where we are now at about 1,900. Now this isn't a bad thing at all, and it's still far more wish lists than we ever had, finally, I insist. But to be brutally honest, it is maybe worrying that we're not going to reach this 7,000, 10,000 wish list mark that everybody claims is the minimum you want for any indie release to be considered a success. At least to see it perform well on the Steam store and to have them push it algorithmically to audiences around the world. And this is essentially the tricky part that we're in. We know that when our game is posted somewhere that has a massive audience, that it does get a generally good click-through rate. And if we go on Steam, we can see all the different stats, and we can see that we are at about 3 to 4% for a click-through rate, which apparently is actually quite good for a Steam game, which I did confirm to myself, as I think whenever I search Steam games, it'll come up with 30 different things, and chances are I'm not going to open a new tab for several different games. I'm either looking for one game in particular that I already knew I was going to click on, or I'm looking through this list of games and I will directly navigate to it. All that to say, we know that our game definitely has an audience out there. It's just reaching that audience and making them aware of our game in the first place, which is a bit trickier. And so that means we've had to take a bit more of an in-depth look at our marketing, coming up with some potentially wacky ideas that may go a bit further and have a bit more reach than typical avenues that we're currently taking, as well as solidifying and improving on the things that we're already doing, like this YouTube, our shorts, and our TikTok. But nevertheless, we've still got time to improve those things, make more of them, and hopefully reach a wider audience and get more wish lists before release. Fingers crossed. So I've essentially devised a marketing plan. This has various different things that we're going to do and other things that we want to do before launch, all to raise our audience and hopefully get more wish lists. This includes some random things that we could do, whether it's potentially posting some fake articles that somehow link in with Strange Shores, potentially reaching out for partnerships with certain people, and ultimately, of course, having lists of content creators that we could send our game to. I think the tricky thing about marketing with games is that it's not like most services that would appeal to everyone. Everybody at some point in their life is going to need a funeral home, to go to the shop, maybe even an injury lawyer, but not everybody is a gamer and is going to be on games. Again, the difference with TV is that they're already watching TV, so if you want to market a TV show or a movie to someone, they're probably already interested. And also it's far more mainstream than games, for now at least, where the vast majority of households in the West will have TVs in their home. Where in the majority of first world countries in general that can afford it will have TVs in their home. But with games, it's a very select market, and also if people are gaming, you can't put ads every 5 minutes in between a game. Or you can sometimes put ads into a game, but it's product placement more often than not. Or it's shitty little mobile games. And I'm sorry to say that mobile gamers aren't necessarily PC gamers, which is why it is my personal opinion that the vast majority of PC gamers will find out about different games from content creators, whether they're playing it, have a paid sponsorship, or are directly linked with the developer in some way and want to promote their game as a friends and family bonus. So we will be going down the content creator route. However, we will probably want to be doing this when our game is feature complete and it has everything in it that it will have on launch. And as previously stated, with multiplayer being as temperamental as it currently is, this is still something that needs a bit of work before launch. But if you keep up to date with us on Reddit, Discord, YouTube, TikTok, chances are you will see the various different marketing ploys that we use, and we will also likely make a video after the release of Strange Shores on how we marketed the game, what worked, what didn't, and the ultimate result of all of that marketing. One of the things that we have done to market our game is to run a competition. Now, details of this competition are on Steam, but they've also been sent out to different outlets through their Contact Us function on their website. Whether or not anything comes of this, we do not know. As it currently stands, there is only one person, I believe, that has entered the competition, and so chances are they're gonna win. But by all means, if you want to get in with a chance of filling the other 2 winner slots, as currently the pool of candidates is quite small, links will be down in the description below for you to get more details and also apply. Now, another part of the marketing deal or shtick or general game viability when it comes to performing well in Steam is to inevitably look at your competitors. Now, we still feel that the desktop idler or passive game, whatever you want to call it, is a very new and minimal market in terms of the competition out there. However, it does turn out that there are several desktop fishing games. And whilst we wouldn't necessarily want to say go buy theirs instead of ours, we are still going to advertise them on here, as we do all bring something different to the table. But it's important to look at the figures and the stats for these other games to find out where they're beating us and what we could potentially do better to entice people to get our game. However, that's not to say that we want to steal potential customers from them, because again, as I said, they are very different games. Some of them do probably have a bit of a better art style than me. Some of them do have maybe better progression. And so our game stands out in the sense that we will have multiplayer, or we technically already do have some form of multiplayer, but we will have 4-player multiplayer for release. We are there, it's just laggy at the moment. It just needs tweaking. But nevertheless, if you're making your own game, it is worthwhile checking out the competition. If you found that another game does everything your game does with more and or does it better, chances are you probably don't want to release any time around theirs. You could potentially release earlier and maybe you supersede them because your game was there first and people grow to enjoy it as a community and you support it to add in features and functions far quicker than they do. And with game development taking as long as it does nowadays, even for indie studios, there's a high chance that you could do that. But nevertheless, you definitely want to check things out. There's no point sinking another 3 months into a game if you already know that this team with 10 developers is doing everything you're doing and better. But again, that's pretty much about it for everything that we did in the last week. There were several moments, however, where the networking aspect and the businessification side of making a game did come into play. And we looked at various different things and whether or not that was applicable to us. We are in a fortunate situation where one of our developers is in England and one of us is in Wales. And so if we were to set up the game as a business and start looking at funding opportunities, we could apply to whichever country we wanted to. Now, Wales being a much smaller market in terms of developers that are currently running here would mean that if we were seeking funding from a government, it would be much easier. And whilst unfortunately we can't guarantee that every country in the world has funding for game studios, we are in the very fortunate position where Wales are making a bit of a push. And so we did look at various things about how we set up our company and if we apply for funding, what funding is applicable to us, business loans, everything, just to find out essentially what the best path forward for us was. However, we ultimately decided that we're going to stick it indie. We are already far too far through the development of Strange Shores to apply for certain funding, and also the ideas of loans is quite scary when it comes into liability and everything else of that nature. And where we've already seen a definite interest from a certain market in Asia, it makes sense to build on that and see how successful we can make Strange Shores, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it does well enough that it can support us for a good amount of time for us to start focusing on our next project. But by all means, again, if you are a game developer and you are looking for funding opportunities to make your dream game, then have a look at government grants. You never know, they might be quite useful to you. And it could be the slight bit of capital that you need to start development of your game that sees it skyrocket and absolutely decimate all the competition. Indie games are also currently smashing it out of the park. Whilst this year we have had Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance release and Assassin's Creed Shadows, we've also in the past month alone, maybe 2 months, seen games like Repo and Schedule 1 absolutely fucking smash the market in terms of sales and concurrent players, proving that a lot of companies probably shouldn't have sacked off their best teams. But there's also lawsuits coming across that. Overall, the gaming space at the moment is going through a fair bit of change. It's being noticed by legislators like the EU, and the recent slew of layoffs coming from big developers, sometimes immediately after they've released and developed an amazing game, actually seem to be having some action taken about them, which is ultimately a good thing on both accounts. So I guess to finish off, if you're still considering game development and you're weighing it up and you're umming and ahhing whether or not it's a good career move, whatever, I'd probably say it is. Now, I may change my mind after the release of Strange Shores, but I have a strong feeling that I won't. The gaming market is getting more attention than it ever has. Indie games are being recognised more than they seemingly ever have. And if you're still really on the fence, subscribe to our channel, join our Reddit, join our Discord, and hopefully in 3, 6, 12, maybe even 24 months, it'll be a case that if me and James can do it, most people probably can. But that's all for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.